He walked into the small grocery store late in the evening after finishing another long day of work, his young daughter tugging gently at his sleeve as she asked if they could buy the same cookies her mother used to bake before she passed away. He smiled faintly, but his heart ached with the memory of the woman he had loved and lost. He told his daughter they would pick them out together, and she beamed with innocent joy. As they made their way toward the checkout line, he noticed the cashier. She was young, perhaps in her early 20s, her uniform slightly loose and her hair tied back in a hurried bun. Her face carried a tired look, but what caught his attention most were her hands. They trembled so noticeably that even as she scanned a bag of apples, it looked as though she might drop them. His daughter leaned closer to him and whispered softly, asking if the lady was cold. He shook his head slowly, his curiosity rising. When it was their turn to step forward, the single dad set the basket on the counter and watched as the cashier scanned each item. Her hands continued to shake, and she pressed her lips together as though trying to hide it. She avoided eye contact and focused only on the machine the father finally could. "Not! Stay silent!" He leaned forward and asked her gently, "Why are your hands shaking?" The girl froze for a moment, her eyes wide. Then she gave a nervous laugh that did not reach her eyes. She whispered quietly that it was nothing but the tremor only, grew stronger. The father lowered his voice so that others in line would not hear, and asked again, "Are you sure everything is all right?" At that moment, she stopped moving entirely. Her chest rose and fell quickly, as though she was holding something heavy inside. Then she looked at him straight for the first time, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. She told him she had been working double shifts without rest because her little brother was sick at home and the hospital bills were piling up. She admitted she often skipped meals to make sure her brother had enough to eat, and the shaking in her hands was from exhaustion and hunger, not illness. The father felt his breath catch in his throat. Her words hit him like a storm. He looked at his daughter, who now stared at the cashier with wide eyes, as if trying to understand why someone so young had to carry such pain. He remembered how hard it had been for him raising his child alone after his wife passed away, nights of no sleep, days of endless work, moments of despair when he wondered if he could keep going. He knew exactly what it meant to stand at the edge of breaking, but still forcing a smile for those who depended on you. The cashier quickly apologized for saying too much and tried to continue bagging the groceries, but her voice cracked and she dropped a can by mistake. The sound echoed and she bent down hurriedly, her shaking worse than before. The father reached down to help her, and when their hands brushed, he could feel just how cold and weak her fingers were. His daughter knelt beside them and offered the cashier a small sticker she had been keeping in her pocket, the kind children often collect with bright stars and colors. She said softly, "Maybe this will make you feel a little better." The cashier stared at the sticker as though it were gold, her lips trembling before she whispered, "Thank you." The father knew then that he could not walk out of the store and forget this moment. He asked her quietly if she had eaten anything today. She hesitated, then admitted she had not eaten since yesterday morning because she had chosen to save the little money she had for her brother's medicine. He felt something stir deep inside him, a reminder of how kindness from strangers had once saved him during his darkest time. He pulled out his wallet and, without another thought, paid not only for his groceries, but also slipped a bill across the counter and told her to get herself a warm meal. She shook her head at first, insisting she could not accept it. But he spoke with a firmness and gentleness combined, telling her it was not charity. It was one person who understood pain, helping another who should not be carrying so much alone. She stared at him speechless, her lips parting but no words coming out. Her eyes glimmered and a single tear rolled down her cheek. His daughter reached up and patted the cashier's hand, whispering, "You are strong like my daddy," and those words broke the last Of her composure, she covered her mouth with one hand as she sobbed quietly, trying not to draw attention from the other customers, but the father stood by her side, shielding her as best he could until she regained her breath. When the groceries were bagged, he did not rush to leave. Instead, he asked her name. She told him it was Emily, and he promised her that he would return to the store soon, not just as a customer, but as a friend. She nodded silently, her throat too tight to speak, and he walked out with his daughter. The night air felt different. It carried a sense of unseen connection, as though two lives had crossed paths for a reason. At home later that evening, while he was preparing dinner, his daughter asked if Emily would be okay. He looked at her and admitted softly. He did not know, but he intended to make sure she would not face her struggles completely alone anymore. The thought of her shaking hands stayed in his mind as a haunting reminder that sometimes the strongest people are the ones who suffer in silence until someone dares to ask why. The following day, the father could not push Emily from his thoughts. He had spent most of the night thinking about her words and the quiet trembling of her hands. His daughter had fallen asleep quickly holding the sticker sheet she had wanted to give to Emily, as if she had already formed a bond with the cashier. He sat by the window long after midnight, wondering why fate had placed her in his path and whether he was supposed to do more than offer money for a meal. The next week, he returned to the grocery store, intentionally timing his visit at the same hour, hoping to see her again when he entered with his daughter, the same worn uniform and bun caught, his attention behind the counter, though this time Emily tried to smile when she saw them. It was faint and tired, but it was real. The girl quickly ran ahead of her father to wave at Emily and show her another sticker she had saved. Emily bent down and thanked her softly, but the father could still see the lines of exhaustion under her eyes. He waited until the line had cleared, before walking up with only a few items just to have a chance to speak to her when she began scanning the milk. He asked gently if her brother was doing better. She blinked, surprised that he remembered, then whispered that he was stable for now. But the bills were still overwhelming. She confessed she had been trying to pick up extra work wherever she could, but she worried about leaving her brother alone too long. The father nodded slowly, the memories of his own struggles resurfacing, how he once had to beg neighbors to watch his daughter when shifts kept him away, and how shame had weighed heavier than the fatigue. He leaned closer and told Emily that sometimes accepting help is not weakness. It is the strength to keep those you love alive. Her lips parted as if to argue, but no words came instead. She looked down, her hands trembling again. The father made a decision then and there. He offered to bring meals to her and her brother at least a few times a week. He explained that he already cooked for his daughter, and it would be no trouble to prepare extra portions. Emily shook her head at first, the refusal ready on her lips, but his daughter suddenly interrupted, saying, "Please, let Daddy help. He is good at cooking spaghetti and pancakes." Emily could not stop the small laugh that escaped her, despite the heaviness in her heart. Later that evening, the father kept his promise. He brought a container of warm food to the small apartment where Emily lived. She was hesitant when opening the door, but gratitude filled her eyes when she saw the meal inside. He noticed the place was clean, but sparse. The furniture worn the signs of someone fighting to maintain dignity. Despite poverty, her little brother lay on the couch, thin and pale, yet he smiled politely and thanked the man for the food. The father introduced himself and his daughter, then sat down for a short while, sharing stories that brought gentle laughter to the room. Emily watched silently, her shaking hands resting for the first time, as though the weight she carried had been lifted, even if only briefly. Days turned into weeks, and soon, the small act of bringing meals became a rhythm. The father found himself looking forward to seeing the light return slowly to Emily's face. His daughter adored her and often insisted on choosing stickers or drawing small pictures. To give her when they visited, the boy gained strength little by little with proper meals and medicine, and Emily herself began to regain some color. Though the strain of work was still heavy, the father admired her resilience, her refusal to surrender, even when the world seemed determined to break her. One evening, as they sat together over dinner, Emily confessed something she had never told anyone. She admitted that sometimes she felt so hopeless. She thought about quitting her job and abandoning everything because she could not see a way forward. Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady, as though daring him to judge her. The father reached across the table and placed his hand over hers, steady and firm. He told her he had once felt the same after losing his wife. He admitted there were nights when he wanted to give up. When the grief was so strong, he questioned whether he could raise his daughter alone. But every time he looked at his child, he found the strength to continue. He told Emily that her brother needed her in the same way his daughter had needed him. Tears streamed down Emily's face, but they were different this time. Not of despair, but of release of knowing someone truly understood her. Silence hung heavy in the room before she whispered, "Thank you. I do not feel so alone anymore." His daughter leaned her head against Emily's shoulder and whispered softly, "You are family." Now those words cracked open something inside Emily. Her hands no longer trembled. She pulled the little girl close and cried openly for the first time in years. From then on, their bond only grew stronger. The father noticed that his own grief felt lighter when he helped Emily, and Emily discovered that her burdens no longer crushed her when she shared them. They became a strange little family forged not by blood, but by pain, resilience, and unexpected kindness. One afternoon at the store, a co-worker whispered to Emily, asking who the man and his daughter were. She smiled gently and said they were her friends, but in her heart she knew it was something deeper, a connection that had changed the course of her life forever. The father never sought recognition for what he did. He simply remembered what it felt like to stand on the edge and prayed that no one else would fall if he could extend a hand. Emily never forgot the night he first asked why her hands were shaking. It had been a question born of simple curiosity, but it had saved her life in ways words could not capture. Years later, when her brother had fully recovered, and she had finally been able to return to school, Emily stood at his daughter's graduation ceremony, tears in her eyes, as she clapped for the young woman who had once given her a sticker to remind her she was not alone. The father glanced at Emily. From across the aisle, their eyes meeting with unspoken understanding. Two lives forever intertwined, because one man chose to ask a question and one woman chose to answer with the truth.